The rain came without warning. Thick, silver sheets fell from the sky as thunder rolled across the quiet town of Elm Ridge, Oregon. Within minutes, streets turned into rivers, and the sky became an unforgiving blur. The kind of storm that made even the oldest residents pull back from their windows and say, "This one's different." Sarah Rayner stood by the sliding glass door of her kitchen, staring out into the backyard where her 3-year-old daughter, Lily, danced barefoot on the wet grass, spinning in circles with her favorite red umbrella. "Come inside, baby," she called, her voice muffled by the roar of the rain. Lily giggled and twirled again. It was only a moment. Sarah turned to grab a towel, just a second to wipe her hands. When she looked back, Lily was gone. Just gone. No scream, no thud, no dragging footprints. Just the red umbrella, lying open on its side, spinning slowly in the wind like a forgotten toy. Before we dive deeper into this chilling and heartbreaking mystery, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more true stories that defy explanation and grip your soul. Sarah sprinted outside, barefoot like her daughter, shouting her name over and over. Her husband, Tom, was already halfway home from the fire station when he got her call. By the time he arrived, police were on the scene, tape was being rolled out, and a search team had begun sweeping the area. Every second felt like water slipping through their fingers. Sarah and Tom were the kind of couple people admired, devoted, warm, ordinary in the best way. High school sweethearts who built a life filled with early morning pancakes, bedtime lullabies, and backyard picnics. Elm Ridge had always been safe, slow, reliable. Nothing truly bad ever happened there. Until Lily disappeared. The Rayners lived on the edge of the forest. Not deep wilderness, but enough trees and underbrush to hide more than a few secrets. Some said the forest was cursed. Most laughed off those tales, dismissing them as stories meant to scare children. But that night, no one was laughing. The police response was immediate. Flashlights pierced the night as officers combed through muddy trails and swollen creeks. Volunteers arrived in droves, soaked to the bone but determined. Tom joined them, refusing to rest, pushing past exhaustion. Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat on the porch all night, waiting for the sound of tiny footsteps on the wooden steps. Days passed. They found nothing. Not a shoe, not a footprint, not a single piece of clothing. Just the umbrella drying quietly in the corner of the police station evidence room, too bright, too clean. Detective Rennell, a stoic man with years of experience and a face carved by worry, led the investigation. "She didn't just vanish," he said, more to himself than anyone. "Someone knows something." Kids don't disappear into thin air. But the problem was there was no one to suspect. No one had seen a car, no strange footprints, no break-ins, nothing on the cameras from nearby streets. The neighbors were home, watching the same storm swallow their flower beds. The town turned its eyes toward the woods. Rumors started. Some whispered Lily had wandered too far and fallen into the creek, washed away before anyone could find her. Others said they saw headlights in the woods that night. One woman insisted she heard a child singing outside her window around midnight, but there was no proof, nothing to follow. The storm had stolen more than the light, it had taken the trail with it. Tom blamed himself. Firefighters were trained for emergencies, yet he hadn't been there. He began sleeping at the station more often, avoiding the home that echoed with silence. Sarah, on the other hand, clung to every detail of that day. She played the memory like a film on repeat. Lily's giggle, the swirl of her dress, the shape of the umbrella. She refused to believe her daughter was dead. "I would know," she told anyone who questioned her. "A mother knows." A week after Lily's disappearance, the entire town held a vigil. Candles lit up the town square like fallen stars. Sarah stood among them, holding the red umbrella tight to her chest, as if it might bring her daughter back. But the days stretched on and the hope began to thin. News crews arrived, then left. Search dogs came, then were pulled. The backyard grew green again. The woods returned to their quiet ways. And the umbrella, once Lily's joy, became a haunting presence in the corner of Sarah's room, clean, red, and still. And Lily was nowhere. Not then, not yet. The morning after the vigil, the woods swallowed the sound again. The search resumed at dawn, more methodical this time. Authorities extended the grid radius 5 miles out from the Rayners' home. Teams of trained volunteers, local law enforcement, and rescue personnel combed through dense undergrowth, soggy hillsides, and slick riverbanks. Dogs barked into empty air, sniffing trails that vanished near the old logging path. Each day they searched, and each night they returned with nothing. Helicopters buzzed overhead, their rotors chopping the humid air, scanning the thick canopy for flashes of red or movement too small for human eyes. The creek was dredged. Drones were flown over nearby marshland. Every old shed, basement, and crawl space within 20 miles was opened, lit, and examined. Still nothing. The community, at first shaken and unified, began to splinter under the pressure. Tension simmered beneath polite exchanges. Eyes lingered too long on neighbors' doors. Whispers followed Sarah at the grocery store. Soft, sharp things like, "What was she doing letting her out in the rain?" and "Maybe it wasn't an accident." Sarah noticed, but she didn't care. She had stopped hearing anything that wasn't Lily's voice in her head. Tom buried himself in the search effort. He organized groups, led late-night patrols, and called in old favors from his firefighting network. He barely went home. When he did, it was only to shower and scan through Lily's clothes, trying to decide if something was missing. He grew leaner, quieter. His skin turned pale from sleepless nights, his temper frayed like rope soaked too long in water. Sarah kept Lily's room as it was. She folded her daughter's pajamas each morning and placed them on the pillow. She stopped turning off the nightlight. At night, she sat by the window with the umbrella in her lap, watching the yard, waiting. She wasn't alone. One afternoon, a retired teacher named Helen Prescott, who lived 2 blocks over, called the sheriff's office. She said she'd seen a small figure running along the back fence line during the storm, too short to be an adult, too quick to be imagined. But when they checked the area, there was no sign of passage. The soil showed no disturbance, no prints, no snapped branches. 3 days later, a jogger claimed to have spotted a red object bobbing in the Willamette River. Divers were deployed, hopes ignited. They pulled out a child's shoe, tiny, muddy, laced with a cartoon cat on the side. Sarah collapsed when they brought it to her, but forensic tests revealed the shoe had been submerged for over a year. Not Lily's, just another ghost. The leads kept coming, then breaking apart like brittle twigs. A gas station clerk swore he saw a little girl with curly hair, and a confused look passed through with a trucker. Police chased the vehicle for 3 counties before confirming the girl was someone else. Another woman believed she saw Lily at a rest stop in Idaho. Nothing. As weeks bled into months, suspicion took on new forms. Someone suggested the Rayners had staged it. An insurance scam maybe, or a cover-up. Theories ballooned in online forums, fed by faceless posters who didn't know the family, who hadn't walked through the woods with blistered feet, or screamed their daughter's name until their voices broke. Tom punched a man at a gas station who said he thought the whole thing smelled off. He wasn't charged, but the message was clear. People were beginning to question what they once supported. Elmridge, once known for its warmth and neighborly bonds, grew colder. Mailboxes were left unopened longer. Curtains stayed shut. Sarah felt it when she walked downtown, the way conversations died when she approached, how her presence weighed on people. Her grief was no longer shared. It had become a burden to others. And still, the umbrella remained. At night, Sarah placed it gently at the foot of her bed. The police had returned it after their initial investigations. No forensic evidence, nothing unusual, they had said. But Sarah knew better. It had been outside during the storm, yet it was clean, too clean. The fabric unblemished, the metal frame unscratched. The kind of thing a child would grip tightly. And now, it looked untouched. She ran her fingers over the handle every night, half expecting it to hum or pulse. She spoke to it, told it stories. Sometimes she imagined it might talk back. A year after Lily disappeared, the town held another vigil. This time, fewer people came. Some didn't want to reopen wounds. Others were just tired. The candles flickered weaker this time, swallowed by wind before their time. Sarah stood alone at the edge of the crowd, clutching the red umbrella, her lips moving soundlessly. and above them all the clouds gathered again. Time did not heal. It only dulled the edges. By the third month, the search team dwindled to a handful of dedicated volunteers. Detectives were rotated out. New cases piled on desks. The file marked Lily Rayner, missing, was moved to a lower drawer. No new evidence, no witnesses, no reason to believe she would be found. The forest grew thick again, as if it had never been disturbed. Sarah stopped opening the curtains. The light felt too artificial, too indifferent. Every morning she performed the same ritual. She made Lily's bed, placed her favorite stuffed bunny on the pillow, and sat in the rocking chair beside the window. She stared at the trees and whispered her daughter's name like a prayer that had no God left to answer. Food lost its taste. Time became elastic. Mornings bled into evenings without a clock in sight. She kept a journal, filling it with dreams, symbols, fragments of conversations she imagined having with Lily. There were pages she tore out, burned in the kitchen sink, convinced they contained something she shouldn't see. Tom drifted further from the house. When he did come home, he barely spoke. He would sit on the edge of their bed, his eyes on the floor, while Sarah tried to talk about signs, omens, dreams, how she believed Lily was still nearby. He stopped responding. His eyes stayed empty. One night, he didn't come back at all. A note on the counter scribbled in blue ink. "I don't know how to help you. I can't even help myself." From then on, Sarah lived alone in the silence. The red umbrella remained. She kept it close, propped against the bedroom door, resting on the kitchen table, sometimes even placed in the passenger seat of her car, as if she were driving someone precious. She spoke to it, read stories to it. The umbrella, she believed, had been the last thing Lily touched. It held something of her. She brought it to a medium once, someone recommended by a woman from the vigil. The session was strange, full of vague murmurs and cold air. The woman said she felt a child very near, but couldn't go further. "There's something blocking her," she said, "like she's caught in between." Sarah clung to that. As the one-year mark approached, the world outside seemed to move on. People no longer asked how she was. Her phone stopped ringing. The local paper ran a short article. 1 year since Lily Rayner vanished. Family still seeking answers. But there were no answers, only the weight of absence. The day of the anniversary, she dressed Lily's bed with fresh sheets, braided the bunny's ears, and walked to the backyard. The grass was long again, curling over the path that once led to laughter. She stood where Lily had disappeared. The air was damp, though there was no rain. She closed her eyes and whispered, "If you're there, baby, give me something." A breeze stirred. The trees rustled. The umbrella, sitting upright beside her, toppled. It wasn't much. But Sarah fell to her knees, weeping. That night she dreamed of Lily. She stood at the foot of the bed, dripping wet, holding the red umbrella like a sword. She didn't speak. She just looked at her mother with wide, solemn eyes. When Sarah reached for her, she vanished into mist. The dream returned, night after night. Sarah began researching similar cases, children who vanished under strange circumstances. She found forums, old newspaper scans, obscure books about forest legends. One account from 1967 described a child disappearing in the middle of a storm in upstate Washington. Another from 1933 mentioned a girl with an umbrella swallowed by rain and returned never. Most people dismissed these stories as folklore. Sarah didn't. She mapped the incidents on her wall. There were patterns she couldn't explain, but they gave her something to do, some form of direction when everything else was lost. The umbrella, still in perfect condition, stood beside her as she worked. She believed it was watching. Tom, meanwhile, had moved into an apartment near the firehouse. He spoke to his co-workers only when necessary. He turned down promotions, started drinking heavier. The wall between him and Sarah became impenetrable. He couldn't bear to see Lily's drawing still taped to the fridge, couldn't stand the smell of her shampoo that lingered in the hallway. Their marriage dissolved without ceremony. No fight, no paperwork at first, just silence. The town, once so deeply involved, now barely remembered. Children grew older, schools filled again. New headlines took the place of old sorrow. But Sarah remained frozen in that moment. The world had turned away, except the umbrella. Always clean, always dry, always waiting. 8 years passed. The house aged in quiet sorrow, paint peeled, floorboards groaned. Yet Sarah remained. She had no reason to leave. The walls remembered. The silence was familiar. Her days followed a rhythm few understood. Tea at sunrise. A walk to the mailbox she rarely opened. Afternoons in Lily's room where the curtains stayed drawn and the bed untouched. Nights beside the umbrella, now resting in a handmade cradle at the foot of her own bed, like a sacred relic. The outside world moved on. Elmridge expanded. New families arrived. Old faces moved away. Time softened the edges of local memory. For most, Lily became a sad story from a different era. For Sarah, she was the only story that still mattered. Then Rachel Kern came to town. A documentary filmmaker in her early 30s, Rachel was known for covering unsolved disappearances, particularly those with unusual circumstances. She'd read about Lily's case in a forgotten blog post, one that included a grainy photo of the red umbrella. Something about it struck her. The image felt too vivid, too preserved. She arrived in Elmridge unannounced, her camera always nearby, her tone respectful but firm. She wanted to tell Lily's story again, to remind people, to reopen a door long sealed. When Rachel knocked on Sarah's door, it was a Wednesday. The sky was pale with clouds like slow-moving ghosts. Sarah hesitated before opening it. She no longer welcomed strangers, but Rachel's voice was steady, her eyes kind, and she asked gently, not like a reporter, but like someone who knew grief too well. Sarah agreed to talk. They sat in the living room surrounded by quiet. Rachel asked about Lily's smile, her favorite songs, her laugh. She didn't start with the storm. She began with the child, and that mattered. The interview stretched for hours. As Sarah spoke, the house seemed to shift. The weight of unspoken words lifted. The red umbrella lay on the table beside them. Rachel asked if she could film it. Sarah agreed hesitantly. But as Rachel set up her camera, something strange happened. The moment the lens focused on the umbrella, the screen turned black. She adjusted the settings. Tried again. Still nothing. The feed remained dead while filming the object, but when she aimed the camera elsewhere, the image returned. Crystal clear. The umbrella refused to be seen. Rachel, at first, thought it was a technical issue. She replaced batteries, changed lenses, even borrowed a different camera from a local photographer. But none of them worked when focused on that single item. "I've never seen anything like it," she muttered, frowning at her equipment. Sarah's hands trembled. "I told you, it's not just an umbrella." That night, Sarah offered to show Rachel Lily's room. No one had entered in years. She opened the door slowly. The air inside was still, like a preserved moment. Rachel entered carefully, her camera held low. As she stepped inside, her breath caught. The temperature dropped instantly, enough to raise goosebumps along her arms. The smell of lavender lingered untouched by time. Then her camera glitched. Again. A static pulse rippled across the screen, followed by a low-frequency hum, the kind of sound that vibrates in bone, not ear. Rachel looked around. "Are you hearing that?" Sarah nodded. "It started a few months ago." They left the room in silence. Back at her motel, Rachel reviewed her footage. Most of it was normal, but when she played the audio from inside Lily's room, she heard something chilling beneath the static. A faint, rhythmic thump, almost like footsteps. The next day, she returned to ask more questions. Sarah, though visibly shaken, had something else to share. "There's something in the basement," she said quietly. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" Sarah hesitated. "I'm not sure. I hear knocking, not all the time, only when I talk about her, or when it rains." Rachel followed her down the narrow steps, camera in hand. The basement was dark, the air heavy with dust and disuse. Boxes lined the walls. Shelves sagged with forgotten tools and jars of paint. But it wasn't any of those things Sarah pointed to. She gestured toward the far end of the basement, behind an old bookcase. "That wall. It doesn't feel right." Rachel examined it. The wall looked solid, but when she knocked, the sound was off. hollow like there was space behind it, a sealed area, a hidden void. "Have you ever opened it?" Sarah shook her head. "I didn't know it was there until last week. I felt something pulling." Rachel stood frozen. The air shifted again. The hum returned, faint but unmistakable. And behind the wall, something knocked. Sarah stared at the wall, her breath shallow. Rachel stepped forward, her fingers tracing the uneven surface of the plaster. It didn't match the rest of the basement. It was slightly recessed, its paint flaked in a way that suggested age, but not wear. Sarah watched her, silently pleading for confirmation of what she already knew. "This wasn't part of the original foundation," Rachel said. "You said you've lived here 15 years. Sarah nodded. Rachel looked around for tools. She found a rusted crowbar near the water heater. "Do you want to see what's behind it?" Sarah's voice cracked. "Yes, I think I have to." Rachel worked carefully, jamming the bar into the seam between wall and frame. With a groan and a loud pop, part of the plaster cracked away, revealing rotted wood beneath. It took another few minutes to pry it fully open. Behind the makeshift wall was a narrow, windowless chamber. The air that escaped was stale, metallic. Rachel shined her flashlight inside. Dust floated like snow. Cobwebs clung to the ceiling. And there, propped neatly against the far wall, was the red umbrella. But it was impossible. Sarah stood frozen at the threshold. That can't be." Rachel moved closer. The umbrella looked pristine. No signs of age, dust, or damage. Its red fabric gleamed under the flashlight, vibrant and dry. But they both knew it had never been there before. Sarah's voice trembled. "I kept it in my room. I saw it this morning." Rachel stepped back. "You're sure?" "I never moved it. It was on my bed." "I swear to you." Rachel approached the object carefully, as if expecting it to vanish. She reached out and gently touched the handle. It was warm. Too warm. She examined it closer. Taped to the curved wooden grip was something new, a small square of paper. It had been folded precisely, like a message. Rachel peeled the tape away and unfolded it. Inside was a photo. It showed a little girl with curly blonde hair and wide brown eyes. Her clothes were unfamiliar, slightly old-fashioned. But the face? Sarah gasped. "That's Lily." The girl in the photo looked about 10 years old. She was standing in front of a backdrop that neither woman recognized. Grey walls, a faintly glowing doorway behind her. Her expression was calm, almost curious. But it was her eyes that unsettled Rachel most. They were knowing, watchful. Sarah collapsed to her knees. "She's alive. Oh God, she's alive." Rachel stared at the image, mind racing. The photo was printed on thick paper, not from any home printer she'd seen. The colors were too vivid, the sharpness too crisp. There was no timestamp, no logo. Just Lily, older than she should be, holding the same umbrella. Rachel turned back to the chamber. She scanned the floor and walls but found nothing else. No furniture, no sign of living quarters, just dust and silence. "Why would it be sealed off?" she asked aloud. Sarah shook her head. "No one's used this basement in years. We only stored paint down here. That wall, it was never there before." Rachel paced the small chamber, taking pictures with her phone. When she checked the screen, her hands went cold. Every image of the umbrella appeared blurred, warped, as if light bent around it. They brought the umbrella upstairs. Sarah placed it carefully on the kitchen table beside the photo. Her hands were trembling. Rachel tried to record it again. Same result. Black screen, static hum. The umbrella refused to be captured, but the photo could be scanned. They uploaded it to a facial recognition tool. No results. They reversed image, searched it. Nothing. "This doesn't make sense," Rachel whispered. Sarah didn't respond. She was focused entirely on the photo. Tears streamed down her face. She traced Lily's cheek with her fingertip. "That's her. My baby. She's older. She's safe." Rachel studied her. Or she was. Wherever she is. It's not here. That night, Sarah didn't sleep. She sat by the window again, the umbrella in her lap. The rain had returned, soft, persistent, a steady rhythm on the roof. She remembered something from the night Lily vanished. The wind had changed direction, just before the silence. She hadn't thought much of it then, but now it clawed at her memory like a warning. Downstairs, the basement door creaked. Sarah stood. The sound was faint, but distinct, like a tap, then another, then three, in rhythm. It echoed up the stairs like a heartbeat. She clutched the umbrella tightly. The tapping stopped. Then, from the back of the house, a second sound, softer. The unmistakable creak of the floorboard in Lily's old room. Sarah turned toward the hall, but the lights flickered. A static pulse moved through the house. Her skin prickled. Rachel, sleeping in the guest room, sat up as the chill passed through her. Something had changed. Rachel sat in her car, staring at the umbrella on the passenger seat. She had left Sarah's house just after dawn, her thoughts a storm of confusion and urgency. She had planned to drive straight home, upload her footage, and begin editing. But something in her gut told her not to, not yet. She parked outside the Elmridge Town Library and walked straight to the local records section. Dusty volumes, yellowed microfilms, stacks of forgotten newspapers. She searched for anything tied to the house, to the family, to unexplained events. What she found chilled her. The house once belonged to Sarah's uncle, Alan Penrose, a man rarely spoken of in town, a hermit, some called him, others, a collector of secrets. He died 20 years ago, alone in that same house. An old obituary noted no known relatives except his niece, whom he'd left the property to in his will, but deeper digging revealed more. A journal had been donated to the library's private archives. A tattered notebook marked only with the initials A.P. Rachel, after much coaxing, was allowed to read it in a back room. It was disturbing. Page after page chronicled odd occurrences, flickering lights, objects moving, whispers in rainstorms. But one entry stood out. Dated June 3rd, 1987, it read, "The girl comes again in the thunder, always with the red umbrella. She waits in the place between, where doors don't close right. I hear her laugh. But she's never older." Rachel's hands trembled. It wasn't the first time. She copied the entry and drove straight back to Sarah's. The storm clouds were already gathering again, just like 8 years ago. The air was thick, charged. Inside, Sarah was in Lily's room, clutching the photo. She didn't speak when Rachel entered. She didn't need to. Something was building, pressing on the walls, thickening the air. Rachel showed her the journal page. Sarah's expression crumpled. "She's trapped," Sarah said. "She's been trapped this whole time." Rachel nodded. "I think your uncle saw her, more than once." They both turned at the same moment. The umbrella resting on the table had tilted slightly. No breeze, no motion, just a shift, like it had leaned forward to listen. That night, the storm broke. Rain poured in thick vertical lines, hammering the roof with a sound like whispers made solid. Thunder rolled endlessly. The house creaked under the weight of memory. Sarah moved with purpose. She gathered Lily's old toys, her baby blanket, the drawing she had made a week before vanishing. She arranged them in a rough circle on the basement floor, with the umbrella at the center. Rachel set up her camera once again. It flickered the moment she hit record. No image, just black. Still, she filmed. Sarah lit candles, though the lights stayed on. Her voice was low, rhythmic, not quite prayer, not quite plea. She spoke to Lily as if she were already there. Then the temperature dropped. Rachel felt it first. A sharp, icy pinch to the skin. The hairs on her arms stood straight. The air turned metallic. Then, from the far corner of the basement, came a sound neither had expected. Laughter, light, childish, unmistakable. It echoed through the cement like a bell. Sarah's knees buckled. Rachel caught her, but the sound didn't stop. It circled the room, overlapping itself, as if more than one voice were playing. The umbrella vibrated. Sarah reached for it, hands trembling. As she touched it, a blast of cold air shot through the room. The candles extinguished. The lights flickered once, twice, and then stayed dark. Only Rachel's camera light remained, flickering dimly. Then they heard it again. Footsteps, small, soft. from upstairs. Sarah looked toward the ceiling. "She's here," she whispered. "She's back." Rachel moved cautiously toward the basement stairs. The door at the top creaked open, just an inch. A draft flowed down, carrying the faintest scent of lavender and rain, and a voice. "Mama!" Sarah sobbed. The air pulsed, not violently, but with presence. The space around them seemed to ripple. The umbrella stood upright, no one had touched it. Then the thumping returned, not from the walls this time, but from inside the circle of toys. It was subtle, rhythmic, like a second heartbeat echoing their own. Rachel raised her camera again. The screen was white static now, but the audio worked. It picked up the voice again. "Mama. Help." And then silence. By morning, the rain had only intensified. Local weather channels called it a rare atmospheric river, an echo of the storm from 8 years before. Roads flooded, schools closed. Trees bowed under the weight of water. But inside the Rayner house, time had already detached itself from reality. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, holding Lily's blanket against her chest. Her face was pale, lips slightly parted, eyes locked on something only she could see. Rachel stood near the basement door, camera still slung over her shoulder, though she hadn't tried to use it since the voice. Neither woman had slept. The storm outside mirrored what churned within the walls. It was as if the house had awakened, creaking, humming, waiting. They moved through its rooms like passengers on a ship at sea, adrift in memory and fear. That afternoon, the power flickered once more and died completely. No electricity, no signal, just wind and water. Rachel lit the candles again. Sarah began preparing the basement the same way she had the night before, but now with even more precision. She brought every artifact of Lily's childhood, clothes, drawings, her old pacifier, a plastic bracelet she used to chew. She laid them carefully around the circle. In the center, once again, she placed the red umbrella. Rachel helped her arrange the space, though her hands trembled each time she approached the object. It vibrated faintly, an unseen rhythm pulsing through its frame. When Rachel tried to lift it, she recoiled as if touched by static electricity. "It's reacting," she said, barely above a whisper. Sarah didn't reply. She took her place within the circle, holding Lily's blanket close. Rain pounded above their heads. The basement felt tighter now, like the walls were leaning inward. The very air buzzed. Then it began again. Footsteps. Above. Light. Measured. One after the other. "Mama." A whisper. Barely audible, but distinct. Not memory. Not imagined. Real. Sarah stood. The sound moved down the stairs slowly, step by deliberate step, though the door never opened. Rachel backed away instinctively, her breath fogging in the chilled air. Sarah didn't move. Instead, she knelt beside the umbrella. "If you're here," she said, her voice firm, "come back to me. I'm ready." The basement floor pulsed beneath them, a tremor, a beat. The candle flames bent inward, as if inhaled by something unseen. Then in the air between them, a crack appeared, not in the wall, not in the floor, but suspended mid-air. A glowing slit, narrow as a page edge, shimmering with pale light. It widened slowly, revealing a strange, shifting fog within. Rachel gasped. The opening was impossible, defying angle, space, material. It looked like a tear in reality itself. Sarah stepped forward. "She's in there." Rachel grabbed her arm. "You don't know what's on the other side." Sarah looked at her with the calm of someone who had already made peace. "I don't care. She's calling me." And then she stepped through. Rachel screamed her name, but Sarah was gone. The rift remained open, humming quietly. Rachel stumbled back, unsure if she should follow or wait. Inside the fog, Sarah moved through a corridor that felt like dream and memory merged. The air shimmered, heavy with moisture. Colors bled at the edges. She saw flashes, her house, the backyard, a birthday party, all distorted, like reflections on moving water. Then, through the haze, she saw a figure, small, still. Lily. She stood barefoot on a stone floor, clutching the red umbrella. her dress slightly askew, hair damp and curling at the ends. Her eyes were wide, confused, but she smiled when she saw her mother. "Mama?" Sarah fell to her knees. "Oh God, baby." She wrapped her arms around her, felt warmth, real skin, real breath. Lily clung to her, the umbrella clattering to the floor. It echoed oddly, the sound bouncing unnaturally through the space. Sarah held her tightly. "I've got you. I've got you now." But the space around them trembled. The path behind her flickered. The fog shifted. A deep sound, low and resonant, like a groan from the earth itself, rippled through the air. Sarah picked Lily up. She ran. The fog thickened behind her. Shapes moved in the periphery, long, slow-moving things that didn't seem bound by direction or shape. The rift was closing. Rachel screamed Sarah's name from the basement, and just before the light vanished, Sarah burst through, Lily in her arms, soaked, shivering, but alive. Lily's body was warm against Sarah's chest, her breath rapid but real. They collapsed onto the basement floor, soaked, shaking but whole. Rachel stood frozen, the glow from the vanished rift fading into nothing behind them. The basement light sputtered once, then steadied. It was over, or it had just begun. Sarah clutched her daughter tightly, afraid to let go. Lily blinked up at her, confused, clinging to the red umbrella like it was part of her. "Mama?" she whispered again. "I've got you, baby," Sarah breathed. "You're safe. I've got you." Rachel stepped closer, stunned. She's really here." Lily turned to her, curious but not frightened. Her eyes looked older than they should have, too knowing, too quiet. Rachel noticed the faint mark on Lily's wrist, a pattern like veins under the skin, glowing momentarily, then fading. Sarah didn't notice. She was too busy checking Lily's arms, her face, her hands. No cuts, no bruises, no sign that 8 years had passed. Her skin was soft, her cheeks full, as if not a single day had touched her. Upstairs, the storm began to die. The house exhaled. They brought Lily to the living room and wrapped her in blankets. She didn't speak much, just nodded, when Sarah asked if she was hungry or cold. Rachel tried asking questions, where she had been, what she'd seen, but Lily only stared, blinking slowly, as if the words didn't fit in her mouth anymore. "She's overwhelmed," Sarah said. "It's too much." But Rachel wasn't so sure. She reviewed her camera footage. The static remained, but there was one clean audio file. It captured the moment Sarah stepped into the rift. There was no wind, no thunder, just the soft whisper of Lily's voice saying, "It's not time yet." And then silence. Rachel didn't show Sarah the clip. Not yet. They drove to the hospital under a clearing sky. The doctors ran every test, blood, neurological, even dental. The results were confounding. Lily showed no signs of trauma, no developmental delay, no evidence that she had been missing for 8 years. To their instruments, she was a healthy, slightly dehydrated 3-year-old. The staff couldn't explain it. No scars, no malnutrition, no weathering. "How long did you say she was gone?" the pediatrician asked. 8 years, Sarah whispered. The doctor looked down, then scribbled silently in his notes. News spread fast. The hospital leaked the story to local press. A child who vanished and returned unchanged. Reporters swarmed the Rayners' house within hours. Sarah refused to speak. She blocked phone calls. Her only focus was Lily. Tom showed up 2 days later. He had aged, grayer, thinner. But when he saw Lily wrapped in a blanket on the couch, his breath hitched. He dropped to his knees and cried. "Is it really her?" he asked Sarah, eyes flooded with disbelief. "Yes," she said simply. "She's home." He reached out, but Lily leaned into Sarah instead. She didn't recognize him, or maybe she did, but the time between them was too vast to cross in a moment. They stayed together that night, Tom on the floor beside the couch, Sarah holding Lily in her arms. Rachel kept watch from the kitchen, drinking lukewarm coffee, unable to sleep. She spent the next day researching. She found cases again, quiet ones. Children returned months or years later, unharmed, unchanged, but different. Every case included two common threads: sudden rainstorms and the presence of a red item, sometimes a jacket, sometimes a kite, and in one instance a balloon. And in almost every case, the returning child aged slowly, if at all. Rachel recorded her findings, planning to include them in her documentary, but something made her hesitate. The more she uncovered, the more she wondered if the truth was ever meant to be known. A week later, government officials arrived. They didn't wear uniforms, but their presence was clear. Suits, files, quiet voices. They asked to speak to Sarah alone. She refused. They asked about the basement. She said it had been renovated. They requested access. She told them to leave. That night, Rachel watched two men in an unmarked van park across the street and sit there for hours. The next morning, the basement door had a new lock, not installed by Sarah. She packed her things that evening. Before she left, she handed Sarah a flash drive. "It's everything I've found," she said, "including the audio. Use it if you need to." Sarah didn't ask questions. She hugged her, tears in her eyes. Rachel looked at Lily one last time. The girl sat quietly by the window watching the clouds. Her fingers tapped softly on the glass in an unfamiliar rhythm. Rachel drove away, and behind her the storm began to gather again. The world didn't know what to make of it. News anchors stammered through the story with cautious amazement. "Girl missing for 8 years returns without aging." Headlines ranged from celebratory to conspiratorial. Social media erupted with theories: time travel, parallel dimensions, elaborate hoax, even alien abduction. Sarah ignored it all. She kept the windows covered, the doors locked, the phones off. Her only focus was Lily, who had become quiet again, calm, observant, detached. She didn't play. She didn't cry. She simply watched. Some days she would sit for hours in front of the fireplace, spinning the red umbrella slowly between her fingers. She never let it out of her sight. Tom stayed at the house, though he never moved back in officially. He tried to reconnect with his daughter, reading her stories, offering her toys, cooking her old favorites. Lily responded with polite silence. She would look at him, blink, then return to whatever silent game she was playing. One night he found her standing in the hallway, facing the blank wall. Her fingers were tapping the same strange rhythm Rachel had noticed. "Lily?" he asked gently. She turned, smiled faintly, and said, "It's quieter now." He didn't ask what she meant. Rachel, from afar, kept tabs on the story. She refused to hand over her footage to any network, despite offers that escalated into the 6-figure range. She knew what she had seen, what she had felt. It wasn't meant for public consumption. Instead, she completed her documentary and uploaded it anonymously, encrypting key sections. It quickly gained traction among fringe researchers and digital forums. But many dismissed it as artful fiction. The Rainers never commented publicly. Then came the men in suits again. This time they didn't knock. Sarah returned from the grocery store to find them inside the house, speaking to Tom. They claimed to be from a government research agency concerned with child welfare in anomalous cases. Their tone was cool, professional, but beneath it lay something Sarah recognized: fear. They asked where the umbrella was. Sarah told them it was gone. It wasn't. It was hidden beneath Lily's bed, wrapped in an old quilt. That night, the agents installed a device in the basement, something metallic, buzzing faintly. They didn't explain its function, only said it was for safety. Sarah demanded they leave. They did eventually, but not before one of them handed her a card with no name, just a number. Tom was shaken. He'd seen a folder one of the men accidentally left open. Inside were photos, not just of Lily but of other children. Other cases: red jackets, red shoes, red kites. He didn't say anything to Sarah until the next morning. They decided then to leave Elmridge, not abruptly, quietly, slowly. They began packing in secret, disconnected utilities in phases, sold furniture to strangers from out of town, told neighbors they were downsizing. Lily said nothing. But each day she seemed more lucid, more here. On the last night, Sarah woke to find her daughter standing beside the umbrella, whispering. "What are you saying, sweetheart?" she asked, voice still thick with sleep. Lily looked up at her with eyes far older than before. "They're still listening." Sarah knelt down. Who? Lily tilted her head. The ones in the rain. The next morning, the family left before sunrise. No goodbye, no announcement. They drove to Montana, found a quiet cabin in a wooded area far from towns, far from questions. They enrolled Lily under a new name. She never asked why. Months passed. Life took on a slow rhythm again. Sarah began painting. Tom worked in a nearby mechanic shop. Lily walked in the woods each morning, umbrella in hand, though the skies remained clear. One day she brought home a pine cone and placed it at the windowsill. Sarah asked, "For decoration?" Lily smiled. "No, for warning." That night Sarah checked the umbrella. It was damp, but no rain had fallen. She buried it deep in the forest the next morning, dug a hole with trembling hands, and laid it down like a body. She covered it with moss, rocks, and finally silence. When she returned home, Lily was drawing. Circles, lines, a doorway. Sarah didn't ask. She sat beside her daughter, placed a hand over the paper and said, "You're home now." Lily looked up. "For now," she replied. Months turned into a full year. The cabin in Montana became a home. Not perfect, but real. The kind of place where silence didn't mean fear and quiet didn't carry weight. Sarah planted a garden. Tom built shelves. Lily laughed sometimes. It came slow at first, like remembering a sound you hadn't heard in a long time, but it came. They never spoke of Elmridge, not aloud. The forest behind the cabin remained undisturbed, and the umbrella stayed buried beneath moss and stone. No footsteps, no voices, no flickers of light in the night. Still, Sarah walked there often, just to check, just to feel the earth. One morning, Lily stood in the kitchen buttering toast when she turned to her mother and asked, "Do you think the others made it back?" Sarah paused. "Others?" Lily nodded slowly. "Some were older, some weren't ready." Tom looked up from his coffee. He didn't speak. They had learned not to push when she said things like that. A few days later, Sarah opened the mailbox to find an envelope with no return address. Inside was a flash drive and a single sheet of paper. One line, "Keep her safe." They don't forget. Rachel's name wasn't on it, but Sarah knew it was from her. The drive contained the full documentary, unedited, raw, audio logs, visual anomalies, journal scans. It ended with a short video clip of Rachel speaking directly into the camera. "If you're watching this, I'm probably gone, or I've disappeared in a way no one will explain. Don't trust anyone who knocks. Don't let them near her. Don't let them near the umbrella. And whatever happens, don't follow the storm." Sarah buried the drive in the same place as the umbrella. She didn't cry. She simply whispered thank you and covered it with earth. In time, the family began to rebuild. They adopted new routines. Lily began school under a different name. She excelled in math, but rarely drew. When she did, the shapes were always the same. Circles, spirals, doorways, lines that didn't quite align. Her teacher called once, concerned. "She doesn't talk about the past. She just says she was asleep for a long time." Sarah reassured her gently. "She's just adjusting." But inside, she carried the weight of every word. Tom and Sarah found peace in slowness. They didn't look for answers anymore. Not because they didn't want them, but because they feared what knowing too much might do. One evening, as snow fell soft against the windows, Lily sat with her mother by the fire. "Do you ever wonder why they let me go?" she asked. Sarah looked at her daughter, her fingers brushing the girl's hair behind her ear. "Every day," she said. Lily didn't respond for a long time. Then, almost to herself, she said, "Maybe they wanted you to see." Sarah's breath caught. "See what?" Lily looked at her. "That it's not over." That night, Sarah dreamt of the umbrella. It was open, spinning in mid-air, suspended above a forest that twisted like a spiral. The rain fell upward. She heard laughter, lilies but layered, echoing, multiplied. And somewhere in the distance something watched her, not with eyes but with knowing. She woke to silence, no wind, no snow, just calm. Lily stood by the window, barefoot. "It's still buried," she said. "I know," Sarah whispered, But it doesn't matter. They're already here. Tom joined them quietly. No one spoke. They watched the woods together, waiting for a sign. But none came. Not yet. The next day, Sarah began writing everything down. The dreams, the whispers, the symbols. Not for the world, just for Lily. A journal of memory, of warning. They lived simply, off the grid mostly. They grew food, bartered with neighbors. The past followed them, but only as shadow, never fully formed. Sometimes, when it rained, Lily would press her hand to the glass and hum a tune no one taught her. Sarah recognized it, though. It was the same lullaby she had sung the night Lily disappeared. Time passed. The documentary resurfaced on fringe networks. It was debunked by major outlets, dismissed as myth. A few believers lingered, most moved on. But if you ask the locals in that corner of Montana, they'll tell you of the quiet family near the ridge, the girl who never grows older, the mother who walks into the woods at dawn, the father who stares too long at the sky. And if you ever find yourself there in the middle of a storm, listen closely. Sometimes you'll hear tapping on the glass. And sometimes, if you're not careful, you'll hear someone whisper your name. So, if this story kept you holding your breath, don't forget to subscribe for more true mysteries that linger long after the final word. And before you go, make sure to click the video on your screen now, because the next story might just be waiting for you.